Today, we're going to dive right into the mechanics of Pakistan's civil service as our case study. We'll be unpacking the neat theories and, well, the often incredibly messy realities of bureaucratic promotion.
Here's our agenda for today. We're going to cover 1. What is a promotion? 2. Seniority versus merit. 3. The Pakistan promotion system. 4. Mechanisms of advancement. 5. Bureaucratic realities. And finally, 6. Recent shifts and reforms. Let's get right into it.
So, starting with Section 1, what exactly is a promotion?
At its core, a promotion is simply a vertical movement, and it brings what the literature calls a pleasant change for the employee. We're talking an increased salary, obviously, and a nice boost in prestige. But there's always a catch, isn't there? It also means you're taking on much more complicated, absolutely vital responsibilities for the organization. Think of it as a critical management tool. It's designed to reward competence and keep people incentivized over the long haul.
Now, the scholar L.D. White offers a really brilliant perspective on this. He points out that a healthy, well-justified promotion system actually does a whole lot more than just reward the veterans who've stuck around. A truly target-oriented system acts kind of like a magnet. It actively attracts the brilliant, energetic brains of the youth. It maintains this highly competitive, high-energy environment where people actually know their hard work is going to be recognized.
Moving on to Section 2, Seniority versus Merit.
So here we have the absolute classic clash of administration philosophies. On one side, you've got the seniority system. This is strictly based on your length of service. Essentially, it's just first come, first served. But then on the flip side, you have the merit system. Under this model, advancement is basically a race based entirely on productivity, capability, and your actual service record. The most energetic, productive person wins, regardless of whether they joined 10 years ago or 10 months ago.
Now, there is a fascinating trade-off between these two ideas. With a pure seniority system, you get absolute clarity, no ambiguity. It totally prevents political favoritism, and honestly, there's no real jealousy or heartburning among the staff because everybody just waits in their spot in line. But the downside is pretty massive. The person sitting right at the front of that line might not actually be capable of leading. It's the classic Peter principle, right? Being an absolutely fantastic subordinate doesn't automatically mean you're going to make a great boss. Seniority really just rewards survival, not necessarily capability.
Okay, let's look at Section 3, the Pakistan promotion system.
So how do you actually reconcile these two completely competing philosophies in the real world? Well, for Pakistan's public administration, the crucial anchor is the Civil Servants Act of 1973, along with the appointment, promotion, and transfer rules. This legislative framework actually sets up a hybrid approach. They're basically trying to get the best of both worlds.
The law blends both of these philosophies to maintain institutional memory while still rewarding competence. For general, everyday progression, they use a principle called seniority cum fitness. This means you move up based on your seniority as long as you meet a basic minimum threshold of performance and integrity. But, and this is a big but, for higher, really critical leadership positions, the system pivots entirely to selection on merit. At those senior grades, the safety net of seniority completely vanishes, and the best-performing officers are selected competitively.
That brings us to Section 4, Mechanisms of Advancement.
This advancement pipeline is, honestly, a meticulously structured gauntlet. First up, you have the Performance Evaluation Reports, or PERs, where direct supervisors document an officer's yearly performance and integrity. Next, departmental promotion committees, or larger selection boards, literally physically review the files of eligible officers. But just getting to that review stage requires passing some strict thresholds. We're talking a minimum length of service in your current grade, completion of mandatory specialized training, and of course, a spotless disciplinary record.
But what happens if your file just gets lost in the shuffle? Well, if an eligible officer gets skipped over, and I mean not because they lacked merit, but merely due to red tape or administrative delays, the system actually has a built-in legal fix for that. It's called pro forma promotion. This allows the government to retrospectively grant the rank, the seniority, and the back pay to an officer who was unfairly denied their timely advancement just because of a bureaucratic hiccup.
Moving into Section 5, Bureaucratic Realities and Criticisms.
Before we outline the specific flaws identified in our sources, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question here. Does a system that leans so heavily on tenure genuinely incentivize high-quality public service delivery? Or, does it just reward surviving for a long time?
The empirical data reveals some pretty severe realities that complicate the neat written rules. Because performance evaluation reports are filled out by direct superiors, they are naturally highly prone to subjectivity and bias. The sources highlight that this fosters a culture of compliance. Essentially, it creates an environment of yes men who prioritize pleasing their bosses over objectively delivering services to the public. Add to this a pervasive perception of politicization and patronage, where juniors linked to influential seniors fast-track their way up through social ties. Ultimately, because promotions lean so heavily on longevity and those subjective reports rather than measurable public results, there's a really distinct lack of accountability.
And all of that leads us straight to systemic rigidity. When efforts are made to introduce modern, new public management reforms, they often just hit a brick wall. The established bureaucracy has massive institutional inertia, and it actively resists changes that threaten those traditional, very comfortable seniority structures. This creates a glaring disconnect between the formal, rigid framework and the fast, responsive governance that the public actually needs.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, recent shifts and reforms.
To combat this kind of stagnation, the focus is really shifting toward an up-or-out philosophy. Recent legislative amendments have placed strict caps on reaching the absolute top-tier leadership level, grade 22. Lawmakers have actually capped the number of times an officer can even be considered for this top rank. If an officer repeatedly fails to meet this elite leadership threshold, the system effectively mandates their retirement. It's a hard limit, specifically designed to ensure only the absolute best make it to the highest echelon of the government.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to chew on. As these rules are amended and new reforms push forward, we have to wonder, can any deeply entrenched bureaucracy ever truly perfectly balance the comfortable stability of seniority with the urgent modern demand for a transparent, merit-based government? It's an incredibly high-stakes balancing act that impacts literally every public service you rely on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and always keep questioning how the systems around